Macrosystem's Object Tracer is a package of several different effects with a focus on pixel tracking or motion tracking technology. This allows the editor to place coverage on objects or over moving images. It also even includes an extension of the image pool to work with. In order to work with Object Tracer, we do need to be running with system versions of SmartEdit 2.5 or above in the SmartEdit 2.0 series, 3.1 or above in the SmartEdit 3 series, or any of these SmartEdit 4s. To activate Object Tracer, simply go up to Install Product, and at this point then insert your All Software Smart Card or your All Software CD, depending on your system, and then alphabetically in the list, you'll locate Object Tracer and choose to activate the program. If you were given a 12-digit code from your area dealer after you purchased the program, you'll be able to type that in and make your Object Tracer active and part of your system. If Object Tracer is something that you would want to check out in a demo mode, which I would highly encourage for anyone that's interested in the program before you buy it, you can always click on Activate and choose to demo the code so that your program becomes in a demo so you can practice with the program. The Object Tracer has several different filters that we're going to take a look at here. Most of them are accessible here from the Edit menu. Basically, all these effects have one thing in common, is that they recognize parts of a picture, like someone's head or a body or an object, and track the movement of it. The Object Tracer's main feature is basically in its ability to hide and spotlight images. There are also some secondary options in the program which we'll briefly cover, but we want to focus on the stronger elements of this program. And the first one here is the ability to hide images, very common in use of law enforcement video. In this case, we have a clip of an officer pulling over an individual. And what we wish to do here is hide the license plate so that we have a coverage over the license plate for the person's identification. What we'll do here is we're going to use one of the parts of the Object Tracer, and that's found under Special. And what I'd recommend when using Object Tracer, whether you've activated it or put it into a demo mode, is you may want to declutter your bin because the filters of Object Tracer are kind of spread out. So for now, I'm going to take All and switch All so I only focus on the filters that come with just Object Tracer. As I said, decluttering the bin so we are only focusing on the one particular package. And here you'll see that there are two parts of the Object Tracer, a couple above the white line and a few below the white line. The first one we're going to talk about here is called Hide Area. And what we wish to do here is first talk about the reference area. If you open up reference area, you're going to get what is commonly seen in most of the Casablanca software is the ability to position and size a box. Again, in all boxes, remember the upper left-hand corner of the box that you'll see on the screen here is basically where you're going to drop down its position. So if I was to left-click up here for a moment, that's going to drop down the position, and then I can left-click on the size to stretch the size of this box. This box that we're calling the reference is actually referencing a pixel or a contrasting pixel area that we wish to use as our reference to cover up on the video. In this case, we're going to cover up the license plate. So I'm going to want to take the position of this box and take it down to around the plate and size it so that it fits inside the plate. The reference area is the most important part about the Object Tracer. Depending on your position and your size and what parts of the video you are referencing is going to affect how well the program is going to create your filter. Right now we've referenced just the license plate here, and we know that this scene doesn't have any kind of major changes other than the camera is moving and that the actual size of our plate is going to change, which we can also adapt for in the program. So I'm going to hit OK now that I've set our reference. Under Options, Options is asking you a couple of items here. Number one is the object changing? We have three choices here about that. The first one is called Static Object. This basically means the shape stays identical from begin to end of the tracking. A more dynamic one is an image that is going to actually have a changing feature, such as maybe a person changing their face to the camera from front to profile. And the faster this changing occurs, then you might want to set it up to fast. This is not a completely static image as the license plate is increasing in size as the camera moves forward, so I'll probably set that to middle. Object moving is actually talking about the ability, is the object actually sitting still or is it actually moving in the video as well? In this case it is not moving as much, so I'm going to click on Slow. In here, we're going to determine what we're going to use as our hide tool. You can see that there are 4 different sliders, and they're all dependent on what you choose here as your hide effect. Are you going to hide the object with a color, which would then allow you to open up your color wheel? Would allow you to hide it with a blur, and then you have a size blur tool to increase or decrease a blur. Do you want to use a mosaic and cover the image up with mosaic based on these pixel sizes of the mosaic? Or do you wish to use some kind of noise to cover it up? In this case, we're going to do just a simple blur. The blur does take a little more of the render engine than a mosaic or a color because those are a little more simple. We'll try a lower level blur here for the moment. And down here is basically saying, of this hide tool, what kind of shape do you wish to work with, and do you want to have the edges of that shape soft? Very simply, we can make the shape either rectangle or an ellipse. In this case, I'm going to make it a rectangle because we are working with a license plate, and give it a very soft border here. Not too soft, but something that's going to make the edge just soft enough, not so sharp around the edges. A sharp edge would be more down here at 0. Remember, you have to left click on the slider to set it, and then left click again to set your choice. Now I can hit OK. At this point, now I need to determine what area am I hiding in this video. So if I left click on hide, now this is our position and size box to hide the area, and we want to hide this license plate. So a lot of times your reference area is going to be very similar in location to where your hide area is going to be, but the reference area is actually following a specific pixel or a contrasting pixel point that will have movement in the video. Our little hide image here is going to follow along that if it does move in the video. It is important to note that if your image is going to change, in this case the license plate is going to grow in size as the cameraman moves forward, I'm going to want to set this mosaic or blur to be a little larger than the first frame of the video of this smaller plate. That way it'll compensate so that when the plate gets bigger, it'll still fill and size this shape. If I had done a smaller hide area like this, as the video increased in size, this size still stays the same, but our video plate would get larger, and it may not get covered up by this blur. So you have to do a little bit of compensation prior if you know that your image is going to change. So I'm going to increase the size of my plate coverage a little larger here, and then hit OK. At this point, you can then open up full size, or previously you could hit full size to check out how the look is going to go. And you can see we've kind of blurred this plate. One of the things that you'll notice about Object Tracer is we don't have a frame slider here in the full size preview, nor do we have actually the ability to preview this because of the complexity of the program. So in order to actually kind of preview and see what you're doing, you're actually going to be doing your creates and using your creates as your preview. So you're going to want to hit OK to close Special to start the actual build of your filter. Use this now as your preview reference, so that if you saw anything wrong, if it looked like this tracked off, or you started to see some of the image you're trying to cover up based on what you've chosen in your filter commands, then you might want to cancel and go right back to Object Tracer and try making some adjustments. As I said, the reference area is probably going to be your #1 area that you might go back and change the position and size to do or have a more effective filter change here in the Object Tracer. We're going to speed up the render here for the purpose of this demo. Now that we have our new scene, we can hit play. And we can clearly see that because we let the size of that license plate stay a little larger, as the plate got a little bigger, the pixels still tracked with that license plate as the camera moved along here and covered it up with the blur. So there's the original, and here's the new fixed scene. Let's take this to another video using a little bit of a different scenario using hide. In this case, we have the individual getting taken out of the car and arrested for their illegal behavior. This is a little bit of a wiry person that's not too pleased with what's happened.
Go after the bad guys. What are you picking on me for?
And for some situations on television with police video, we may need to hide the individual suspect's face. And we're going to use one of the other hide filters here under the Object Tracer. So back under Special, again choosing Hide Area. We're going to come into Reference Area. And in this video, we know that the suspect's face is actually going to turn away from the camera here. So we're going to definitely have a changing image. So one of the first things is that I was going to use my position arrow here and take it up to this area to try and track along with the face tones here. This is going to lose its track because the person's face changes. So in this case, I might want to reference the darker contrasting pixels in this area. Now again, depending on the size of the shape of your pixels, this may be or may not be a very good grab as a part of tracking. But we're going to set it up here on the tones of the hair and then hit OK. Under Options, this time we're going to use a mosaic and hit a increased size mosaic. Our object is changing a little quickly as she's turning her head back and forth, and the object is also moving. So I'm going to set both of these to fast. Under Shape, we're going to try more of an ellipse with a slightly smooth border, and then hit OK. The hide area now, we do need to reference the face because this is the area we're to cover up. Again, if I set the hide area to this size, if the camera moved around and the subject changed their face area, we might not actually have coverage if they were to turn away and have the outer edges of this box come into this area based on their movement. So we may have to plan ahead and oversize this box a little bit. I'm even going to give a little bit of a lead room too as the camera person moves closer to the subject and kind of tracks around them. I know I need to have a little extra lead room in front of this face. So I'm just going to size my box a little large and have a little extra room here over on the left. Now I can hit OK and hit OK to see the preview or also the create. So here's our final clip that we can play.
I didn't do anything. Go after the bad guys. What are you picking on me for?
So we still see a little bit of the mouth coming to there. You could probably get away with this in this video. Or we could always still come back to the original, and under hide area we might actually increase the box size and then push up the lead room a little more. And this is probably going to cover up the face a little more correctly. But we got most of it on that particular scene here. As you can see that the face stayed blurred, and as we tracked around, most of the information still stayed blurred. But some small compensations may be necessary there. If you ever have a scene that's a rather long scene and you're trying to do a track, you may end up splitting your scene into pieces using your split button. So that maybe you have to split a scene up to the first part where the face is turned around, and you could split up to say use here. The part that the face is not visible, you could roll even up to a second. Here she's starting to turn. You could say use and then have the remaining portion here. That way you only have to apply that filter maybe on part 1, skip part 2 because the face is turned away, and then apply the filter on part 3. This may save you a little bit of rendering time since you'll be doing individual pieces, and then you can reassemble them in the storyboard as a full scene in order with those particular splits and filter changes. Because not always will the image necessarily need to be filtered out if in this case a subject's face is one of the key points that we're trying to focus on and may be turning away from the camera. Let's take a look at another type of filter that's commonly used here in the object tracer. We're going to roll down here and reference some HD footage here for a soccer game. So here's a clip of a player running off camera there after a particular score or after a particular scene on the action footage. What we're going to want to do is actually spotlight this person. So instead of hiding them, we're going to use the pixel tracking software to track this individual and follow along with a highlight. So here's how this is done. We're going to select the scene that we wish to use, and you may have to trim this scene prior. As you can see, this has been an already trimmed scene from a large group. We had a specific scene here we wanted to focus on. And I'm going to go under Special, and in this time I'm going to choose Spotlight. And under Spotlight, we're going to use Reference Area. And here under Reference Area, we're going to reference the area here of the face, trying to get as much detail as a pixel grouping reference of kind of the face skin and the head to follow along with. If I chose some of the white here, it might have got a little confused in the pixel tracker as he passed in front of another white shirt. So you definitely want to use strong contrasting areas as your reference point, and the position and size of that box is also going to make a difference. So I'm going to drop this position and size right here along the edge where the ear and the hair meet. It's a nice contrasting reference area, and hit OK. Under options, we do have the object is changing. His head turns around across the whole time, and he is moving rather quickly, so we might set this to fast. We can choose to say, how do we want to affect this brightness or the brightness outside? Now, you probably have a hard time seeing what this might actually be doing, so at this point you might go ahead and open up your full-size preview and then open up your options and start adjusting your brightness controls here. Again, these are not real-time sliders, so in order to see the changes, you need a left click to change the slider, left click to set it, and then hit OK. And you can see that's what I did to the background brightness, which I don't want to have. I'm actually going to reduce that some more and smooth out the border. That's better. I can hit OK to close the full-size preview if I want. And then I can use spot area, and this is saying what area do you wish to spot and track along. And again, you might want to compensate, making your box size a little larger than your subject based on their movement and the direction they're going to face. I'm just going to keep this box mostly above the size of the subject at this point on the camera. Now we can hit OK to start the create. And again, we'll render this quickly here for the purpose of the demo. So now here's our subject with the followed spotlight following along him as he moves. Now, just as an example, you may be wondering, well, what happens if you don't actually track this correctly? Let's say under Special, under Reference Area, I chose something more generically like maybe this black pants and hit OK. Now, when I hit OK, we'll see how well this works with that being done as our reference area. You can see even in the preview here, it actually got caught off guard by that black bag in the background and thought it's supposed to track that area. Now the tracker flies off, losing location, believing that the bag and maybe the pants were the same type. Even though we've moved closer to the camera, that black on those pants changed. So here is the incorrect reference. So it lost its track. So you can definitely see that the reference area is very important based on the size, the position, and what pixel reference you are looking at. And the best I can say is try to get a very good contrasting area as your reference to get it to work correctly. But it'll certainly work great as long as you're getting those settings properly. And that's where you're going to come in and go into reference area and perhaps experiment, trying out a different position and size, and then hitting OK to check and see, well, how's it going to work? How did that one do? Cancel and try again if necessary. Those are the two most powerful parts of the object tracer. There's a couple of other elements in the program I'm just going to briefly cover for you. One is called the place image. In this case, I'm going to reference this shot of the fish at the aquarium. And we're going to take a look at a filter under Special as the place image. Now, all three of these filters below the south of the white line in Special, these are also image processing filters. So you'll also find these back in the main image processing menu. We're just referencing here under Special so that we can automatically build a layer of that clip in your scene bin. Under Place Image, the same thing applies with Reference Area again, is that we want to find a nice pixel offering of contrast that still follows along the video and doesn't disappear. In this case, we have the fish eye, which is best here as what we might want to track, better than maybe a part of the skin. So I'm going to set the position and the size of this box to fit over just the eye of the fish. And that's going to be our pixel reference of what we're going to track. Under Options, we have the ability to change the options here based on, is the object changing on the screen? Well, just a little bit. Is the object moving? You know, it certainly is. Maybe fast or slow. You could experiment between either or. I might switch this one to fast and hit OK. Select Image. Select Image is actually asking you from the image pool to choose from the object tracer to have an image follow along your subject. In this case, we could reference different things from our different filter packs, but I'd recommend sticking with the object tracer and its set of 89 images that it comes with. And you'll see here in our custom image pool or pattern generator some very nice point out graphics here or highlighting graphics. Little things to follow along a particular subject on the screen. Talking bubbles, arrows, question marks, light bulbs, hearts, different things of this nature. I'm going to stick with just an arrow here to make it kind of simple. And here is an arrow with a direction which I can choose to flip depending on what direction I want to have that arrow pointing at my subject. And I'll stick with this diagonal down. And you can always choose to activate your colorize wheel, so you can mix multiple colors here, use 3 colors, maybe a tint of that, or adjust the brightness, contrast, or saturation of your particular arrow. Once you've set this up the way you'd like, then hit OK to close your select image. And now it's up to you to say, where do you want to place this image? And here is a box for the position and size of that subject. And we could position it here over the fish head or the tail, wherever we'd like. But it's going to track along on the screen and move with the fish based on the movement of this eye. So I'm going to have it actually highlight the fish tail and hit OK. And I can check myself under full size preview and see, oh, that might be a little close. So I'll go back to full place image here. Move it up out of the way a little more. That's better. Hit OK to close the full size, and then hit OK to build the track. Now that the track is done, when I hit play, you can see that this arrow is now going to kind of move along with our fish. So placing an object on a particular moving image in this case, tracking along with it. A couple of other parts of Object Tracer we're just going to briefly mention is, one, that there is a couple of stabilization controls. Under Special, north of the white line, you'll have a Stabilize 1 and a Stabilize 2. Stabilize 1 is very simple, trying to stabilize the image on the screen. Stabilize 2 actually has 2 reference areas. This will be the case if you were trying to stabilize maybe a tilted camera. So the camera might be shaking but also be tilted, and you might want to try to do a correction for both of those. Stabilize 1 would be the more commonly used one, and that's referencing just a fixed point on the screen that you may want to try and zoom in on a little bit to grab so that the outer edges of your video do not appear to shake. So in this case, we have a shot of the macro system sign here on the front of the building. And we would use Special, Stabilize 1, and under Reference Area, again, this is the key point on how well this is going to work. A couple scenarios here, just briefly so you can see what might happen, is if I set the track here just to a small area on this blue screen, and I hit OK. That might be my reference area. And under Options, again, you have the choice to set it up. This object's pretty static. It is moving a little bit based on the camera. And then we have some quality levels here of how effectively of a job is it going to render this. Obviously, the lower is going to be faster. Best is going to be much longer in your render. This is going to increase a little more of the render time to try and sharpen the edges even more if you wanted to. And then there's an option here called auto scaling. Basically, under the auto scaling, if during the normal stabilization the invisible edges of the image come into view on the scene, you can activate this auto scaling so that the scene actually magnifies and fits the whole video information. This setting should only be used if there's a minor image movement on the edges, or else the scene might get scaled too much. You're definitely going to lose some quality. And regardless, you are going to lose a little quality when you use Stabilize anyway, because it is going to still try to fix on a reference point, and you may lose some of the outer edges of your screen. As a videographer, I might recommend that try to practice more stabilization out in the field before relying on an actual filter to try and improve your video here. That's just a general tip on production. But anyway, we'll take a look at the stabilization here. This takes a while to render. So if I'm going to hit OK and start the render, I'm actually just going to go ahead and show you what the final result of that one would look like. Here is using an outside small reference, which is incorrect in this particular case, because here's the result. A very unstable image, actually making it worse. But if you were to take your image and use your reference area to have a better grab of your pixel information as a reference, pretty much making your contrasting pixel or group of pixels the center point of your reference area, and hit OK, the final result of that type of screen looks like this. a little more stable, a little bit less quality. You could see I had to zoom in a little bit to get a little more stabilization. But as a comparison, here's what the original and the fixed one would look like. And I'm going to use in the transitions menu one of our split screen filters to add to the storyboard and set it for the full length. And here's the comparison. You can see here's the old one and there's the new one. So again, the old and a little bit more stable on the left for the new. So you can see it does make some improvements to that. I wouldn't rely on that as a major filter, but it is available to you, and it does take some rendering time to take in consideration. One other filter that the options that we have in here is one for titling. Under titling, we can add a scene to the storyboard, such as this fish. And over in titling, we have the option here called Place Text, which is another secondary filter here I'd call on the object tracer. Basically meaning that it's going to try to track text along with your moving video. Of course, we'd have to add our filter to the storyboard and then choose our reference area. Again, in this case of the fish, I'd actually want to use this area or pixel reference of contrast that doesn't disappear on the screen. Under options, I'd have to make my setup for is this fish going to change? It does a little bit because it turns away from the camera. And it does have some movement, which you can choose based on what you think it's doing, on move slow or fast. Do you want this title to fade in out, just fade in, or just fade out? Or do you want to set up your fade times for these? And I'm going to set up a real short fade time and then enter my text. In this case, I'll type in text. Maybe just call this guy a fish. And if I want to set up a style of this, I could always set up my style here for color or for outline or for shadows. But I might want to use one of these pre-selected archive filters for my style. If you're not aware of these, under style we do have some pre-selected loaded samples here of different styles to work with. And I might want to choose one of these general ones to just set up. I might try something like gold. And if I didn't like that, I might try something a little different. 3D blue. And then all I need to do is come back out of the text editor menu here to boxes and minimize the size of the box. Some of these functions that you're seeing me move a little quickly through here in the titler are found on the Smart Edit 4 training video or any of our titling tutorial exercises using Smart Edit 4. But basically typing the title out, then using your boxes to minimize the box to fit onto the screen. And now I can come back out by making sure I hit OK and creating my title. The titles render pretty quickly for us. So now I can hit play. And now we have the title, the arrow, following along with this moving fish, kind of tracking along using the pixel tracking technology of the object tracer. One other filter just to mention that is in here is the ability to drop down a particular graphic on maybe a four-cornered image. This is called Place Image, which acts as a transition. So I'm going to take this fish shot that we put the arrow on here and put it up after the sign. As usual in a Casablanca transitions effect, it does depend sometimes on the order of your scenes. And the scene that we wish to have as our background will be shot number 1. And the one that will fit into it as a picture-in-picture, or in this case a placed image, we're going to be doing as the second shot in the series on the storyboard. We then go over to transitions and alphabetically just come over here to Place Scene is the name of the filter from Object Tracer. And don't forget about the little I buttons. At any time in the Object Tracer you can click on these to get a little mini manual of what the Place Scene does, what the buttons actually do, and how it's going to work for you. We have to add your transition effect to the storyboard and then change your timer. How long is this transition going to last? Well, I have a little bit of an extra. This scene here is 3:16, this is 3:12, so I'll have 4 frames of extra on this sign, but I'm not too concerned with that, just for the demo purpose. The first thing that we're going to do in the program is work with the reference area. The reference area marks the search area of your pixel tracker. This is going to be a size reference that's going to be kind of small. When you open up the reference area, you'll see each one of the corners of what we're going to reference to fit in your second image on the storyboard. So first we'll go to top left. This is again referencing the reference area for this particular pixel track. And you have your position button to position this square and the size button to set the size. Don't worry, it's not going to size across the whole screen. It's really only going to have a slight max size here to work with. Because normally you're going to be wanting to set this pretty small, somewhere maybe even around 14 by 14 or 12 by 12, just as a start. And then in the center of this square should be the edge of the object that has high contrast. Once you set each one of these corners, in this case I need to set each one of these center points to be on the area of this sign. Bottom left, bottom right. So the center on each one of those little squares is referencing a high contrast area in case the black border of the sign on this one. And then the options, we're going to basically be putting the same video scene right on top of this sign using the same positions for the image position here. So these are going to be very close to the position of where you used your reference area. Again, based on how the image is on the screen, do we need it to be a moving image or dynamic image or static image? Do we want to use more of a slow or moving choice here? Is the object moving? So we're going to set this to slow and probably set this to static for object changing. There's not a whole lot going on in this shot of the sign. And then each one of these boxes needs to be set. We have a tiny little pixel, that's one that we do not position or size. And sometimes you might actually have to set these a little bit larger than the area which you're covering, just so that the image will fit in there cleanly. Other times these points might fit exactly where you had your reference area. So I'm just giving this a try out right now to make the picture image position a little bit larger than these reference corners. If something was incorrect, I could always take these back and set them on the corners directly. At this point I can close this, and then I can check under my full-size preview to see how does this look. And here's our full-size picture. You can see that the fish is fitting into the area of the sign based on our reference areas. A little bit larger than the sign, so we don't have to worry about seeing any edges of the sign because I stretched out the image position a little bit. We also have the ability to increase or decrease this image size if you had to. So we can raise this up until it seems to fit the sign pretty well. And then you can choose to smooth your borders. So if you want the edges of this sign so that you can adjust that to be more sharp or more soft, it's entirely up to you. And then at that point you would be able to close out and create your particular image on this. Again, your experimentation is going to be all about your references, what you set as your corners on your image, the sizes of these positions. It's going to definitely make a difference on how effectively it works on your production. So the Object Tracer is a really great program for using certainly the main features of the program to do things such as hide subject matter, spotlight subject matter, such as in a lot of sports videos, so you can track along and follow someone, or as in the case of the law enforcement videos, highlight or hide someone that might be as part of a law enforcement case, or do other things such as even placing images to track along with them, or use other images to place scenes, or in fact even stabilize your picture a little bit more with some other secondary filters.